to another Dietitian Talk Live. This is going to be a live Q&A. We have all of our dietitians here from Married to Health with various specialties. We're going to get right into it. I know as we introduce ourselves, as we're saying hi to everybody, get your questions down below. We can see your questions. So this is live, no matter where you're watching this from. It could be our membership group. It could be our YouTube. It could be our wonderful compliment group. And we're excited to answer all of your questions. So type the questions down below as we introduce ourselves. So for those of you who don't know, I'm James Marin, Integrative Registered Dietitian, Environmental Nutritionist.
I'm Delia Marin. I'm an integrative registered dietitian nutritionist. I focus on gut health, especially SIBO and IBS for those who are plant-based. And we'll go ahead and have Katie.
Katie, go for it.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Katie. I am a licensed registered dietitian, and I am also a PhD student studying dietary interventions in breast cancer, and I focus on women's health.
And then Laura, go for it.
We're excited. This is Laura's first time with us live.
Hello, everyone. This is my first live with Married to Health. I'm a licensed registered dietitian, and I specialize in emotional release, women's health, and gut health. So I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Joseph, go for it.
Hi, my name is Joseph Orloni. I am a registered dietitian. I specialize in eating disorders and disordered eating, patients' relationship with food, and also practice integrative model like everyone else here, I think.
Perfect. Vicky?
Hi, everybody. This is not my first time here. I've been with Married to Health and honored to be with Married to Health. This is my second year. I specialize in metabolic issues like diabetes, insulin resistance, preventing heart disease, and dealing with laboratory testing that shows unsatisfactory results like high cholesterol, high blood pressure. So that's my specialty.
Perfect. Awesome. So I do have some questions coming in. Just real quick, another announcement, guys. The 7-day Plant Diversity Challenge is starting tomorrow. What's going to be dropping tomorrow is also the Gut Health Blueprint. So click the links down below, or if you're already in the compliment group, stay tuned for that. Or for those that are a part of our email list, you'll be hearing more about that. So we're really excited. We're going to, again, this is live Q&A. You can answer questions, anything nutrition related, plant-based. What do I say? Answer questions. We're going to answer the questions. You can ask the questions. So we're excited. We do have some questions that are already submitted. So I'm seeing some of those come in. Again, we'll see other questions come in as they're typed. So we're really happy to be here. I have some questions here. You want to kind of get into it? Can you please explain how you diagnose IBS? So this is more IBS related. So this might be Dalia's specialty here. Can you please explain how do you diagnose IBS and dysbiosis and imbalances? I've been recently diagnosed with post-infection IBS purely on my symptoms. So again, for those, maybe you don't know about IBS or you're not suffering from IBS, that's irritable bowel syndrome, and that can range bloating and diarrhea and constipation. I mean, we're seeing this a lot more now. It is happening quite frequently to a lot of people, but I'll let Delia kind of take it. But
yeah, so with IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, there are different types, and you want to know what type of IBS you've been diagnosed with, because that can tell us a lot about your microbiome. So if you have been diagnosed with IBS, it could be IBS-C with constipation, D with diarrhea, it could be mixed where you have both, or it could be one that doesn't fall under the umbrella or the category. So it could be IBS-U. And really the diagnostic criteria is going to be a change in bowel habits or a change in abdominal discomfort that has happened several times within at least a 3 to 6 month period. IBS, I think of as kind of a non-specific diagnosis, almost like fibromyalgia. It's like you have pain, we don't know why, we're going to diagnose you with fibromyalgia. IBS can kind of be the same. It's such a wide umbrella. And in the last 5 years, they have come out with such incredible research on the gut, including IBS, there were some really interesting studies that have recently come out that showed that 60+% of IBS could actually be SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which can certainly explain that change in abdominal discomfort, that change in bowel habits as well. So really understanding, why did I get IBS? Did it stem from food poisoning? Is it related to my stress? I often will ask my patients, is it IBS or is it IB stressed? So really ask, what are the roots of this? Where did it come from? Is it dietarily related? Do you have a food allergy or intolerance? And this is something that's maybe damaging your gut. So really understanding the roots of IBS. So if you have recently been diagnosed, somebody is saying, I've been recently diagnosed with post-infectious IBS purely on my symptoms. There is a risk that within 6 months of being diagnosed with post-infectious gastritis or post-infectious IBS, one will develop SIBO. So that's something to ask your care team about. Do you think it's SIBO? Can you help test me for SIBO? And the gold standard way to test for SIBO is to get a sample of the fluid in your small intestine. It's called a small bowel aspirate. Not all gastros offer that. So the next best thing would be to ask your provider, your gastro, your dietitian, for maybe a breath sample and a breath test for SIBO, just to rule that out.
Wow. It's like you're into IBS or something, I would assume. But okay, wonderful. Another question coming in. When do you recommend prebiotic and or probiotic? I'm guessing, I don't know, they didn't specify other than that, but I know that there are different prebiotics and probiotics on the market, and they have totally different functions in our body.
Mm-hmm. I'd love any of the other RD's input, and then I'll kind of give my 2 cents.
And then we
well.
have more questions coming in too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I can speak to sort of the prebiotic side of things. So in general, for most people, prebiotic foods specifically are what I like to focus on. So things like onions, garlic. For somebody with IBS, though, those foods might be a bit of a challenge. So in terms of fiber is really where those like prebiotics are going to come from. So for like a general population, those foods are going to be great. If you notice that you are getting some digestive distress from some of those foods, you may want to start keeping a bit of a journal and then speaking with somebody on our team or registered dietitian to see if there could be some other things going on like IBS.
Love it. And to also clarify, I mean, when do we recommend prebiotics? Every day, every meal, all the time, if you can, right? Prebiotics are really food. I mean, there's prebiotics in what you're eating, and that's why we love eating plants. Typically, if you're eating a plant food, some more than others, but if you're eating a plant food, they're going to have those prebiotics. And a quick analogy is like you think of the plant food as the prebiotic, and then what they make is that, or really what the microbes that are feeding off the prebiotics, are the probiotic. The probiotics are then making postbiotics. So you get this chain reaction, this beautiful chain reaction. And you can think of it like the example of the soil is the prebiotic, the plant is the probiotic, and the fruit, let's say apples from the apple tree, are the postbiotics. So that's all the benefits you're getting. So it's, yeah.
My analogy that I like to give with this is probiotics can be helpful. I don't want to kind of demonize them. I don't like to give blanket recommendations. So there are certain instances in which probiotics are especially helpful. Even according to the American College of Gastroenterology, there are certain instances where they do recommend always using probiotics. So if you have recurrent C. diff, or if you have pouchitis, which is something that can happen with those with inflammatory bowel disease, and then other instances, I see it benefiting a certain subset of my patients. The analogy, though, that I like to give with probiotics is it's almost like they are a tourist. And sure, when a tourist comes into a city, they're going to bring their benefits, their money, and they're going to stimulate that local economy. They're buying souvenirs, they're going to eat at restaurants, they're paying for their hotel stay, and that benefits the city. But if the people of the city just solely depend on tourists all the time, and they themselves aren't trying to build infrastructure and really build benefits in their own city, that's not very stable and it's not very reliable. Now, there are instances in which someone goes to visit a city and they love it so much, they say, ooh, I'm going to buy a vacation home there. I'm going to move there. I want to move into this city. So you almost want to treat probiotics the same. You want to ask, how often is this tourist going to come visit, right? So you want to think of what's the cost of this probiotic? Can I afford this $60 probiotic per month every month of my life? If I feel better on it, can I continue to afford it, right? Can I continue to bring this tourist in? You also want to consider, what else can I do in my own city? How can I incorporate more prebiotics so that the people already living there are feeling more cared for and more loved, rather than feeling like, I'm just going to rely on a tourist to save us all, right? How do you nurture who's already living inside of you, who's already inhabiting your city? So you do want to consider some of those different things. Do you feel benefits on the probiotics? And then what if you stop them? Do the benefits go away? Or again, have they bought a vacation home in your city, or have they moved in there already? And now you just want to take care of them. You want to make sure they're well fed with plenty of prebiotics. You want to make sure that they're happy and they stick around. Studies do show that after about 3 weeks to 3 months, a probiotic capsule won't continue to garner benefits in most cases. That's not always the case. So I always encourage people, after 3 weeks, let's take a break, see what happens. Let's try that again after 3 months and see, do you keep feeling better, or do you feel horrible once you get off of them? And that can give you some good information. And then lastly, depending on the person, some probiotics might actually make you feel much worse. So there have been studies that have shown those who take probiotics and are not feeling benefits from them, they may feel more brain fog, more fatigue, more bloat. Some people with histamine issues, if they're taking certain strains of probiotic, they also might feel more bloated and uncomfortable. So make sure you're taking the right probiotic. Make sure you're eating probiotic foods before you're thinking of taking a capsule, and 100% make sure you're eating prebiotic fiber before you do any of that.
Yes.
I like
Go
to
for
add
it.
something, if that's
Yes.
okay. And I love the point that you bring, that it just depends. But also, like, I feel like as registered dietitians, we also like food first, right?
Yes.
So we have the prebiotic, which is the food for our little microbes. But we also have probiotic in foods. So before we jump into supplements and all of that, we can benefit from, many other places like yogurt and fermented foods mainly, right?
Yes.
And so I feel like before we even jump into spending our, money, it's like really just getting into the foods first, and then reassessing, monitoring the body, how it reacts, how it takes it. Because like as Dalia was saying, you may have like histamine intolerance, and that's actually hurting you more. So yeah, always food first, I would say, and then supplements if it's necessary, and then keep monitoring, because at the end you will be the expert of your body. No one else. Even if you go to an expert in gut health, you are the one that's feeling, you are the one that's giving the food. So you will be the one that has to determine if it's working or not.
Love that. Love that you brought that up, Laura, because I agree 100%. Probiotic foods can be amazing. And there were some amazing studies that came out in the last year that showed 4 to 6 servings of those probiotic foods a day can help create a more diverse gut and a more robust immune system. So, which we know 70% comes from our gut. What are some of your favorite probiotic foods? I'd love to hear all of your guys' favorite probiotic foods. I was actually eating one right now. It's like a pourable probiotic yogurt, and I put it with berries and a whole grain cereal and hemp seeds. But what are some of your favorite probiotic foods?
I wanted to, I know, and I'm not trying to advertise anything, but lava yogurts, it's something that's very popular in my family. And since there's no added sugar, and they were actually tested by a third-party laboratory, because I heard one of the podcasts that the owner of the company did, that the strains of the beneficial bacteria survived there for quite a bit of a time, and that's when they put their expiry date once they see that the life is diminishing of those, of those strains. So yeah, I think that's a very good food that we can also like add to the kids menu. Since I have a 5-year-old, I always make sure that he gets that at least, I don't know, 5 times a week, and he loves it.
Love it. Great. I love unsweetened dairy-free yogurt. Love that, Vicky. So Lava's Vicky's favorite brand. Perfect. Anyone else have any other probiotic foods that they love or they recommend to their patients?
I like kefir. I actually found a really nice one, really good, that I found not too long ago. It's in Whole Foods, but Ancient, maybe. I can't remember the brand, but it really has like a little tart taste to it. And it's really great to include in like yogurt and like in a bowl with fruit. And I always like it in the morning. But also anything pickled. I really love my pickled veggies. So I think it's a good cheeky way of like adding some probiotics and some color and some extra flavor that brings to the meals.
And it's crazy because not a lot of people know, I think, that you can almost pickle anything, pickle any type of plant food. Like there's pickled carrots and there's pickled turnips and pickled beets, and the possibilities are endless. So
and it's when they start to ferment, when they're there a little bit longer, that they're going to contain the probiotics. So they can start out pickled, and then if you allow them to, they can turn into probiotic as well. So super cool.
Love it.
Great. And then I love, dairy-free yogurts, kombucha, unsweetened kombucha, the unsweetened yogurt. Some of the dairy-free cheeses are great as well. Sauerkraut, kimchi. We love kimchi sriracha sauce in our house. So all these are great to get your 4 to 6 servings per day.
All right. A new
Great
question coming in. We have, how does one incorporate whole grains and legumes when trying to control blood sugar? This might be right up Vicky's alley, but anyone chime in?
Hear from you.
Oh, this could be a question where we get into different rabbit holes, but just to give a quick answer, it depends if the person is plant-based and how much of that are we actually contributing every day. It will all be individually based. And some of my patients, they rely on their blood sugar monitoring, and they will see, if I eat a cup of legumes, will I go above 100 or 120 or 110? It depends, where are they in their health journey? Have they been diagnosed with diabetes or not? The same thing goes with whole grains. And I think that the method of trial and error and monitoring the blood sugar is important for someone who has diabetes. If it's someone who is trying to target insulin resistance, it's also going to be falling under that category. Like, let's monitor, let's see. There's so many continuous glucose monitoring devices right now. They're easy to purchase and use, and do your log and reading. But I would say the general rule of thumb, I would incorporate whole grains at a reasonable amount in every meal, I would say. Still cut oats for breakfast, then maybe quinoa salad for lunch, and with those whole grains, I would also incorporate lots of vegetables. So, we give it a lot of fiber to the body, and that will keep our blood sugar levels more stable. And I don't see why we can't use wild rice for dinner also. So there's no reason to be afraid of whole grains and legumes for anyone who has maybe metabolic challenges.
Yeah. Wonderful. And I think with the continuous glucose monitoring, or again, this is very general. Everyone's their own individual. Everyone is in different places with all of this. But generally speaking, carbs like legumes and whole grains are not the enemy when it comes to type 2 diabetes.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So it's like we've demonized these carbs. We've said even, I'm sure, Vicky, you've seen patients don't eat fruit or don't eat legumes or don't eat even wild whole grain rice, like you said. And it's like, why? Like, what's going on there? So
it's all about balance. I honestly think if somebody with diabetes will be eating mango and bananas all day, then yes, they will be probably putting themselves at a very imbalanced nutrition position, right? But if we create a variety and colors, I think that the rainbow coloring system should be present as we go grocery shopping, as we cook our meals, as we're making our salads or soups, or even when we eat out. I think it's always possible to request some extra veggies on the side and order your brown rice and order your lentils. Like if people go to an Indian restaurant or any kind of fusion place, it's all possible. Right now, places are available. They are accommodating the requests of their clients pretty easily.
Totally.
Love it. Does anyone else have any input on what you teach clients on eating and incorporating and tolerating grains and legumes, and especially for blood sugar balance?
I think of what I've read and researched is having a combination of protein and fat, because that will help amongst the fiber with the veggies, because they're like lower in their glycemic index. That combination of fiber, protein, and fat will help the release of glucose to be slower, and so that it doesn't go up like and then go down super high, because you have all the protein, you have all the fat, and then the carb is slowly releasing and going up in a more like nicely pattern, rather than just go up and down like a little roller coaster. Also, like eat your carbs with clothes, like potatoes. When they're like without the skin, they're probably gonna contribute to more a spike than if you had the skin of the potato. And I also like the same goes with an apple. If you take the skin versus if you have it with the skin, I think you're removing the fiber of it. So yeah.
Totally agree. And like Vicky said, like mangoes, right? Like great, but it's like mango candy. Are you eating mango candy, mango juice? The actual mango is better, but even better is if you put the actual mango in a bowl of oats with some walnuts and some, and you can even put like some nice whole food protein powder in there and other blueberries, and you're leaving, the whole grains, and you're getting quite the diversity of nutrients, the diversity of macros like carbs and fat and protein. And it's all going to help you have this nice ride in terms of your blood sugar rather than these crazy roller coasters. So love it.
Yeah,
It's like the handout we give, right? The plate model, right? So there has to be a balance in your plate.
yeah. I love all the balance talk, because I even see with my patients that have eating disorders, we've had patients with diabetes, and we're not telling them to restrict any foods. All we did was simply add like proteins, fats, and just more fiber around starches, and just balance out meals. Teach them how to balance out snacks, and like one of my patients had like the best blood glucose readings they ever had in their life, while at the same time they were getting treated for an eating disorder, just simply by going the basics of like balance and having all the macros, not just
Love
with
it.
milk, but with like even like having an apple with nuts versus like having an apple by itself.
Mhm. Very cool. Love it.
And sometimes it can take a little bit of adjustment from the body, especially if someone hasn't been eating carbs at all, and now all of a sudden they're trying to eat beans in every single meal. I think that's where the jury's still out on some of those continuous glucose monitors and other things. It doesn't necessarily give you a good representation of long-term how your body's going to do with some of those foods. So finding balance and giving yourself that time is so, so, so important. And working with someone who can support you if you're still having trouble and need some troubleshooting.
Perfect. And just a follow-up question, basic question, are all pickled veggies also fermented? So that happens to go with pickled and fermented.
We were talking about that. No, they're not. So there's a difference between pickled and fermented. Sometimes they are pickled in a fermented brine. So if the brine has already been fermented and you're pickling the vegetables or pickling the food in there, that counts as a fermented food. Pickling is really just adding salt and acid. So that won't necessarily create that chemical reaction to add the probiotic benefits. But if you're adding probiotic species, you're adding a bacteria, you're using a fermented brine, that is what constitutes a fermented food.
And there's some nuance to that, though, I will say, with pickled, because what's really cool is each plant will have its own set of microbes. So there will be microbes within the cell of every plant. So a cucumber versus a beet. And when you're putting it in that pickled solution, it's kind of a mixed bag. You're kind of going, hey, is that beet going to release the microbes? And then are those microbes that are going to thrive in this brine going to do its thing? And so there's variability with that. Whereas adding a strain of bacteria to a specific, whether it's kefir you're adding or something to yogurt, is going to produce that beneficial effect. So you have more control. So it's really the level of control. When it comes to adding a strain, you have a higher level of control versus pickling. It's kind of a mixed bag, and you're going, I hope this cucumber does its thing and it pickles and it'll release some good microbes. So yeah, very good question. And then another question. Yeah, go for it.
Question for you guys.
Yeah.
So I know, like, I made sauerkraut before, and it was simply just salt with cabbage. When you say like brine solution, what does that mean?
So a lot of times when you are purchasing a sauerkraut from the store, there's some type of lactic acid added to it. So this gets the fermentation going. It's kind of like a sourdough starter. You can always take a tablespoon of that brine because it already contains that lactic acid bacteria, add it to your sauerkraut, and then you're 100% sure that you're getting that probiotic effect, and it's going to continue to grow and flourish from there. So that lactic acid probiotic is going to start pickling that the cabbage that's in there. It's going to start eating away at it, which is why it gets softened, because the probiotics are kind of fermenting it. And then you're going to have that nice probiotic benefit of that fermentation. Great questions. Love it.
Adelia, I also got a question from one of my patients actually a couple of days ago, and she asked me this question, and I just gave her an answer based on logic that I thought. So she asked me, is sourdough bread as a final product, does it have probiotics? And I'm thinking, if it has been through a heating process, does it have the probiotics? What do you think?
Technically, no, especially if you are toasting it again, because not only has it been cooked at very high temperature, and not all of them are. Some of them, if they are not cooking at high temperature, they're keeping it under 112 degrees. That could retain the probiotics. But then if you bring that home and you're toasting it at really high heat, you probably have killed it off at that point. So foods like sourdough, maybe buy a low heat sourdough if you want to use it for probiotic benefits. Not all of them provide probiotic benefits. And then also with other foods like tempeh, consider, how do I feel about eating them raw if you're trying to get probiotics out of them. If you just like sourdough bread and you like the tangy taste and you're eating your probiotics elsewhere, maybe it's not a probiotic food for you if you're saying, I don't want to eat it untoasted. But other foods like that are same with tempeh. But you know, you can kind of decide where you're going to get the benefits. But yeah, if it's like you baked it at a really, really high heat and then you're toasting it every time you eat it, you probably are killing off and denaturing those probiotics.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
I have like a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Now that you brought up that point. So it would be beneficial in a sense because the probiotic before it's helping digest the protein, right? Would it be considered sourdough like a easier to digest than other types of bread because of the yeast that has been eating the protein?
Yes, absolutely.
Even though they're killed,
well,
they did their work.
They did their work before. So before you baked it, they were doing their thing, which is why, you know, sourdough bread is oftentimes low FODMAP if it's been fermented long enough. Sourdough bread can be much more easily digested by someone who has non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Someone who has celiac, they're going to react to any amount of the gluten protein. So any amount of that that protein peptide that's in the bread. But for other people who are just maybe sensitive to a lot of gluten, but they don't have an allergy or an intolerance, absolutely, they would likely tolerate sourdough bread a lot better.
Thank
Love
you.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
And all that work has been done before it goes in the ovens. You still get those benefits. Great. We have a couple more questions too.
Yeah.
I love these. We're on the probiotic train. So I feel like we can answer this last probiotic question. Someone's asking, is there a certain time of day I should take my probiotics? Like first thing in the morning or with lunch? So there's no consensus. So I can't give you, you know, evidence shows or studies show. I can't tell you something like that. But what many say and what some, you know, lower quality studies have shown is it's probably best taken on an emptier stomach right before you're about to eat. So again, you want to get that probiotic, that tourist in the city, and then you want to also then give them the gifts of the prebiotic fiber. So that way they stick around. If you try to put them in at a time you're not going to eat, they're going to look around and say, where is everybody? I'm leaving, right? I'm lonely over here. So you do want to try to get them in on an empty stomach where they're not overwhelmed by what's already going on, but also not take them on a completely empty stomach. And that's what most studies are showing. But what I like to say is for a lot of things, the best time of the day, if you actually need to take a probiotic, most people don't. The best time to take it is the time you're going to remember to take it. So if you're saying, sure, it would be great to take it before my breakfast, but that's not realistic for my life or lunch or dinner, then take it at night after you've eaten.
And I would say the best thing with food is a fermented vegetable of some sort, right? Add that sauerkraut, add that kimchi, add that to your bowl. I mean, it can almost go, we pretty much almost eat that with anything, whether it's a Japanese style bowl or something to that effect. But yeah.
The probiotics will get excited. It's exciting when you're traveling and you meet someone else from your same town. So
I have added sauerkraut to salads and it's delicious. So,
love it.
yeah.
Love it. Well, I love all this probiotic talk. We have some other questions as well. Someone was asking a great protein question.
Yeah. Please ignore if not relevant to today's topic. Today's topic is a live Q&A on any questions, so ask any questions. Can you please touch on the issue of protein quality and quantity to support high-intensity training? Let's see. I mean, anyone want to take this on? I know.
Sure, I can start. So in terms of protein, if you're following more of a plant-based diet or you're plant exclusive, you may have heard that like protein from plants is low quality. It doesn't have all the essential amino acids, but newer studies are showing that all plant foods do have all of the essential amino acids that we need. Some are a little bit less. If so, for example, if you only ate beans for your whole day, you're probably going to be low in one of your essential amino acids, but that's not how we eat. We eat in a diverse way. So having grains and other types of plant-based proteins. So in terms of the amount of protein that's needed, for an athlete, it's about 1.2, maybe up to 1.6 grams per kilogram that you need in a day. And so if you are an athlete and you're finding that maybe you're not recovering well, I just suggest tracking like in Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, whatever tracking app you like, just so that you can get a sense for kind of like where your protein intake is coming from and maybe where you could bump things up, or if there's some other reason, if your protein is going well, maybe you're not fueling your body with enough carbohydrates during your session as well. That can also be a big important factor in terms of sports and activity.
Such great tips. And Katie, what if someone's not an athlete? How much protein should they be shooting for on a regular basis? And I'd love to hear, just the average person and maybe someone who's very active and working out.
Yeah, so generally speaking, on average, it's about 0.8 grams per kilogram. And if you are a little bit more active, you can go up to like 1 to 1.2. There are some studies that are showing that fully plant-based eaters that are plant exclusive may need a little bit more than an omnivorous eater, but being around 1.0, 1.2, 1.1, somewhere around that range, you'll be in a good spot.
Love it. Thank you so much. So everyone hopefully is now able to calculate how much protein should they be shooting for and see, do I think I'm getting around that ballpark with the different plant proteins like tofu, tempeh, seitan, fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, seeds, grains, legumes, herbs, and spices. So it's nice to kind of have an idea of what your target is that you're going for. Perfect. Does anyone else have any input on it?
Well, for those that don't know, really quick, or go ahead, Vicky.
No, I just wanted to say that for kidney health, protein, plant protein is so much more better than animal protein.
Ooh, expand on that a little bit. That's a great point.
Okay, I don't know if anyone's asking that question in the chat. However, whenever patients come to me with kidney disease, and there is also a great nephrologist on YouTube. He has his own channel, and he's all about plant-based protein and how much easier it is for our kidneys to digest plant-based protein because it doesn't give that much of a nitrogen waste to our kidneys. I guess people who are on dialysis, they would know it as, ammonia accumulating in the blood. So someone who has been diagnosed with like kidney inefficiency or kidney disease, it's always worth to either work with someone who specializes in that or just to explore more of a plant-based protein to substitute it for, to substitute animal protein for plant-based protein, which is easier for kidneys to do the work. And not to forget hydration with that. Yeah.
Love it. And I got to look back at the study, but the gut microbiome plays a role in this too, because typically when you're eating plant protein, you're getting other plant, byproducts, so to speak, or other chemicals with that, like phytonutrients, right? You're getting fiber and things like that. So we're talking about chickpeas or black beans. And so when your gut microbiome is processing those polyphenols, those phytonutrients, you're getting an added benefit along with that protein. So there's some theories. I got to look back at that study, but there's some really great research, I think, down the pipe, and that has slightly been done to show that the gut microbiome is active when you are breaking down those polyphenols and earlier on when you're absorbing that protein. So really cool stuff. And when you're talking about recovery too, the antioxidants that you're getting from plants, again, these phytonutrients that can be utilized by your gut is really, really important. So I think that could be a missing link for a lot of people. So really cool. Plant protein.
Love it. Anyone else have anything to comment on plant protein?
I was just gonna kind of expand on what Vicky said about to make sure that you're hydrating properly, especially with protein, because we want to make sure that we're, getting rid of that ammonia from the byproduct that protein has when it gets like broken down into its once it's used in the body. Just wanted to emphasize that, but nothing else.
Love it.
Love it.
We still have some other questions coming in.
We do. And it's funny. I think people are very observant. And recently someone wrote on one of our Instagram posts, they kind of noticed our way of eating where we kind of favor a more protein-rich diet, plant protein-rich diet. James and I personally go for that 1 to 1.2, but I exercise 6 to 7 days a week. So someone was asking, like, why do you favor protein so much when you're on a plant-based diet? I know there are a lot of physicians and healthcare practitioners out there that will tell people if you're eating enough calories, you're getting enough protein. And that might apply to certain populations, especially those who might have less physical activity, do less weightlifting, weight-bearing exercise, but that might not work for somebody who is more active and seeking to build muscle. So that always confuses people. They say, no, you don't need that. That's not what this doctor says. They say if you're eating enough calories, you're eating enough protein. And while that applies to certain people, I always recommend to people to follow the advice of those who are speaking to you. Understand who their niche is and who their audience is. If this is a physician who's focusing on heart failure or, kidney disease, you do want to kind of put that into perspective of, do their recommendations apply to me personally? And what could, if I have just different goals of that? So that's always something that I like to share with my patients, because often they are surprised when I'm saying, make sure you eat plant protein in every meal. And they're like, no, I eat broccoli. That's enough. But I'm working out and I don't know why my body composition isn't improving. And so sometimes it does need to be more focused. It does need to be more tailored to really get those benefits out.
Love it. Okay. Should we do a couple more? Let's see. This one here?
Yes.
Let's see here. Should we balance with soluble and insoluble fiber every day? Is it a good routine to eat more insoluble fiber in the evening / late afternoon? A lot of people consider with timing of things, but any thoughts on this? Interesting.
I'm happy to give my perspective. I'd love to hear from the rest of you as well. When it comes to soluble versus insoluble fiber, I always say, think of the fiber cleaning up your gut as you would clean up your kitchen, right? You want to make sure that when you're cleaning the kitchen floor, you have different types of tools. You want to sweep and you want to mop. So you have insoluble fiber, which acts like a broom, and that sweeps things along and pushes them through your digestive tract. So think of your kale, think of the fiber in apples, think of foods that are much higher in roughage that you have to chew a lot, things that won't dissolve in your mouth when you suck on them. So that is more insoluble broom type fiber. You also want to, if you want to clean up very well, you want to mop, or else you'll have a bunch of spots and things will get stuck to them. So you want to ensure that your food also has that mop soluble type fiber that soaks up water, so it can really have that sponge mop cleaning action. There should be a pretty good balance between the two. It depends on your goals. You might lean a little bit heavier, especially if maybe you're somebody who's working on your blood sugar. If you are eating later at night, maybe you want to have a little bit more of that broom insoluble type of fiber in your diet, a little bit higher at night. Not necessarily, though. For my patients who say, I eat a ton of fiber, right? They eat big, huge salads every day for lunch and dinner, and they just have a high amount of soluble fiber. They're also eating beans. They eat whole grains. They're eating other foods that have that mop-like consistency and that soluble fiber in it, but they eat so much insoluble fiber. Sometimes they're surprised that their stool is really loose and it falls apart in the toilet bowl. And that might be just because they have so much pushing things out and not as much that's kind of mopping things up and binding them together. And so sometimes I'll recommend a soluble fiber powder like acacia fiber, partially hydrolyzed guar gum, if they don't want to eat more foods that have soluble fiber, if that doesn't fit into their goals. And oftentimes that helps kind of bind up their stool and they have that beautiful, nice snake-like type 4 bowel movement that they're looking for. But I think every meal should have soluble and insoluble fiber in it. Does anyone else have any input on different types of fiber?
Well, on my end, I will just agree with you here, Dali. I think that balancing both and adding soluble fiber as a supplement for those who are looking for solutions when it comes to high cholesterol levels, that's definitely something to look into. But like what Laura said before, let's go to food first, and that if we don't see that we get enough from there, then adding, like what you said, a fiber supplement.
Yeah. This just kind of reminds me of sometimes a lot of patients I have that will go in like really deep into details. A lot of times I just have to remind them, like, let's try to get the basics down first before we go into the details. So like, yeah, this just kind of reminds me like, hey, are you getting enough fiber yet anyways? Like, if not, like maybe just focusing on getting the fiber first before getting into the details of like, am I getting enough soluble and insoluble? And then, it's totally okay if like you do want to go deeper and like get, timing down, like different types of fiber down and all that. But most of the time it's like we were talking about earlier, like balance with the macronutrients first, then we can move on to micronutrients, then we can start talking about like timing and like other factors, supplements, stuff like that. So I think for most of the patients I see, at least, a lot of them sometimes jump to these more specific like details when then like I'll turn back the question and ask them like, oh, well, what about like some of the basic steps we're still missing? Maybe we could go to those first.
Such a great perspective and one that's so important.
I would add that it's just like, spice baby, you got to spice it up. Variety is just like the spice of life. So as long as you're putting in your plate many different things that have different profiles of nutrients and you add them, they will give you different benefits depending on all the things that you are adding. So if your plate looks with a lot of variety. I think usually on average, I think most of us could get our nutrients.
Very cool. I love that notion too, because we're just scratching the surface of nutrition and understanding the synergistic effects, just the amount of chemical reactions going on when you eat and you're just mixing all these different foods together and the microbes in your gut and what they're producing. It's really, really fascinating. And we're just scratching the surface on all of this. So very cool things to think about for sure.
Love it. We have a couple more questions. Someone's asking, I know you aren't supposed to take iron with a calcium supplement. If you are eating foods that are high in calcium plus high in iron together, will the calcium and iron be absorbed? Love this question.
Ooh.
Does anyone want to take the lead on this question and give your 2 cents of what you're counseling your patients on when it comes to the interaction between iron and calcium?
Yeah, so just like with supplements, the same thing can happen with food. So that iron and calcium, whether it's in a supplement or it's in food, can bind together and decrease absorption. And you may notice like, oh, but certain foods have calcium and iron together. What do I do? I don't think you need to kind of get that granular with it, kind of talking back to what Joseph was saying. But things like having lentils with a glass of fortified calcium fortified soy milk may not be the best way, but maybe try to separate those two things.
You mean I can't make my lentil smoothie? Like,
right, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Have your glass of soy milk with your breakfast and your lentils and a delicious soup. Squeeze some lemon on it to help with that iron, and then you're good to go.
But if that's what you like, James, go for it.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Yeah.
I will.
And I think it really depends on the person as well, right? For the general consensus, I wholeheartedly agree with Katie. Don't get lost in the details and, lost in the sauce and forget about the foundational basics. So if there is a food that has both, eat it. It's going to still give you benefits. If you're someone who has severely low iron, maybe you want to be a little bit more intentional, right? So maybe James's soy milk and lentil smoothie would not work for you. Or if you're somebody with osteoporosis and your team is really, really trying to get more calcium into you, that's when you want to be heavily focused. But if you're not on those extreme ends of the spectrum, eat a variety of foods, enjoy them while you're eating them, and try to get as much diversity as possible. So you're getting an iron, calcium, prebiotic, postbiotics, you're getting in the soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, all these things that we're talking about.
And I will add, your body is pretty darn good at compartmentalizing pretty much. I mean, I know you're from mouth to anus, it's one long tube, but it's compartmentalized for a reason, right? And there's different spaces for absorption, different enzymes in different areas, and different acidic environments and basic environments, and you have your gallbladder. So your body does a really, really good job. And I think just to, again, amplify what we're saying here is yeah, don't stress too much about separating too many things. And I know there's a lot of different trends online of like, don't eat this food with that food, and make sure you wait this many hours before doing this and this and that. And really, when you look at physiology and your anatomy, I mean, that's not really what the science is saying. Sure, there's different ways to enhance foods, like when you're talking about lemon with lentils, or, again, getting that vitamin C with that iron, getting that synergy. Yeah, you're going to have some of those things. A very popular one is also turmeric with black pepper, things like that. We're finding out, sure. But in general, again, that diversity and kind of trusting your body, knowing your body, and allowing your body to do what it's been doing for thousands and thousands of years, which is help you digest the environment, essentially, right? You're putting the environment into your body and connecting with that environment. So your body's been doing that for a long, long time. So it's really good at it.
Also, I'd like to mention that there's like difference when you're taking supplements versus the foods.
Mm-hmm.
Like supplements are a lot more concentrated. So that's probably why you're like having this problem with calcium and iron being in a big interaction because there's so much more concentrated in a supplement form than if you were to eat it in a food form, because the iron is not concentrated. It also has fiber. It also has all these other nutrients. So when it comes to eating foods, I think it's not as The concern is not as much as if you were taking supplements.
Very true. Great point. I think possibly last question.
Joseph, did you have
Or
anything
Joseph,
to add
I
to the
guess?
conversation?
Sorry.
Yeah, I love the like what you brought up, James. Like, I'm not gonna make my lentil smoothie because it kind of reminded me of the wisdom of Mother Nature and also the wisdom of like what different cultures have been doing for thousands of years. Because I think a lot of those foods that have been around for thousands of years that have been prepared that um, kind of like combine different foods together are actually for a reason that helps support like absorption, support our well-being, support our health. Like we were talking about fermented foods earlier, like those are some foods, that come from the wisdom of our ancestors. And just now, like we're finding out how beneficial they are for us. Same thing with like the sourdough bread and the process it takes to make sourdough bread. Right, both Mother Nature and our ancestors' wisdom that kind of does that like separating for us and does that like beneficial like increased nutrient absorption for us. So yeah, I think a lot of times like there's a lot of interesting things to think about, but like don't discount the wisdom of Mother Nature and our ancestors.
There's a reason why I'm Hispanic and beans and salsa just go so well together, right? And even in Dahlia's culture, Dahlia's Egyptian, and they put so much like red tomato sauce on lentils and different beans as well, and it like goes so well. Like it not only tastes good, but in like you mentioned, Joseph, in the culture, it's been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years, just building and formulating together, and it works so well. Love that. Love it.
So if your body's telling you it tastes good together, and
It probably is
culturally,
good.
it's probably great for you. Absolutely. All right, we have another interesting question, and it's funny because this word has become taboo, right? I think us as dietitians, all of our eyes kind of bulged when we saw this word. But detox, I think we're detoxing all the time, right? And people have capitalized on this concept of detox. So let's talk about all things detox, but best foods for detoxification. Love to hear from you all of what some of the foods that you like recommending to help just support our every single day daily detox. We do know we're constantly detoxing through our liver, our kidneys, our GI tract, our lungs, and our skin. And so there any of your favorite foods that will really help support those organs and maybe even enhance or upregulate what they're already naturally doing?
I mean, I think fiber keeps things moving, because pooping is a way of excreting and detoxifying all that has been, it's removing it from the body as it goes and it travels. So we need to make sure that things are moving so that it leaves. But other foods that I think are very interesting is bitter foods for the liver, like arugula and dandelion leaves. I can think of many right
Mustard,
now.
mustard
Mustard,
greens,
beetroot,
turnips.
for example, and that
Beetroot,
nitric oxide, so that it opens up with your vessels, so that there's more blood flow, and so it helps with your removing of stuff. I can think of many more at the moment, but if anyone wants to expand.
I love where you went with that because all I was thinking about was poop. Like, how are you
Make sure you
pooping?
poop.
Yeah. Like, because I know Dahlia works with a lot of patients that have IBS, SIBO. I also see that a lot in the eating disorder population. And, some people tolerate fiber at different levels. So I think the number one, like, clue for you there in detoxification is, like, how are you pooping? Are you having regular bowel movements? Are they are they hard? Are they soft? Is it easy? Is it hard? Like that's I think the number one thing that I think about when I think about detoxification.
And if I can add to that really quickly, because I love this topic a lot. I mean, some of the big storehouses, again, our body is a great protector of us. Our body wants to survive. So if you're in a highly toxic area, I always think of, sorry for anyone in New York, but I think of New York City, right? Or if we're going international, I think of Cairo, Egypt is one of the most like, or even I'll bag on my
LA.
LA, right? I'll think of
Mhm.
Mexico City, right? I mean, just
Highly
lots
populated places.
lots of different things, whether it's, I mean, my gosh, plastics and diesel and just, I mean, you name it, right? So when you're exposed, depending on which level, your body is very smart. It's going to store a lot of these what's called forever chemicals that we haven't really identified how do we get rid of. We'll store it in our bone, we'll store it in our body fat as a protective mechanism.
In our joints.
But the most important thing is that you are doing this foundational level where you're sweating, you're urinating, you're pooping, and you're breathing. And so if you're not doing that, if you're already thinking like, how do I detox? And you do, I'm going to get this detox kit, or I'm going to eat all these detoxifying foods, but you're not doing the basics, you're kind of just unleashing a lot of these toxins in your body. You're kind of just getting them all back into the mix. But if you're not doing the basics, where are they going to go? They're just going to kind of recirculate and then try to hide back again with your body trying to protect you. So you really, really have to do the foundational basics and then think about, detoxing, even though your body does detox, again, with these basics, but then take it a step further where there are some great studies with like cilantro binding to heavy metals and then helping them to excrete them from your body and things like that. So there's some good research out there, but you have to do the basics for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see this like as an analogy of like having like this big stadium full of people for this one football game or whatever, and there everyone is sitting in each chair, and that's our toxins, and they're just happy, content there, and all the exits are closed. But then it's time to leave, and everyone stands up at the same time trying to get out, but the exit is not open.
Right.
So if we don't have our bowel movements open or any of these, our pores and breathing, and if we're having issues with those exits, they can't come out. And instead, they're going to do a lot more damage when they're all trying to get out and they're rushing all at the same time into the blood. So then you're going to get symptoms of like worse than before and not letting them out. So
I love that analogy for
I
sure.
love that. And I think what people want to consider also is before you try detoxing, are you going to try not toxing? Because I hear this from some of my patients or, family members and friends are like, I'm going to go on a detox, but they're drinking tons of alcohol. They eat a lot of hyper refined carbohydrates. They have high amounts of saturated fat. You are asking your organs to not only do their regular work, but deal with all these extra things you're putting in and then try to detox on top of all that. So before you consider detoxing, maybe try pulling back on your toxing because any organ can get overwhelmed, including your liver. And I know, a lot of people have said talking about detox, that's pseudoscience or snake oil. That's not necessarily true in today's day and age where we have a lot more toxicants that we're exposed to nowadays. And so you do want to evaluate that. Do you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Do you have a very high fat diet? Do you have a lot of excess calories? Because that can ultimately end up with more triglycerides type of fat that gets stored in your liver. So do you have some of that pre-work to do before you try jumping in on a full detox? And I love what you said. Are you pooping every day? I had a patient recently who has a lot going on with her health, a lot. She has SIBO, she has Lyme disease, she has so many disorders. Her bowels are pretty much shut down where she only has a bowel movement if she gives herself an enema. And she said, my integrative provider really wants me to detox from mold. And so they want me to do these IVs that are going to help me detox. And I asked her, have you done one before? Yes. How did you feel? Horrible. And I said, well, you're not pooping. So where are all those toxins supposed to go? They're just going to assault all of your other detox organs. She said, I get a kidney infection every time I do one of those. And I said, well, you're trying to liberate toxins and then they need a proper outlet. They need a proper exit. So if that's the case, you're not pooping, you don't sweat, you don't exercise, you're very stressed, and maybe you're not taking deep breaths. Your liver is already overwhelmed and burdened. You've been diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver. Doing something like that can actually not only cause negative side effects, but it can actually be very, very harmful. I've seen people in the past who have had to have other organs removed, appendixes removed after they're doing a detox. I honestly, reflecting back on my own health journey, am suspicious this is what happened to me. Some of you may know that almost 4 years ago, I had to have my appendix removed suddenly. And at that time, one, I was very stressed. Two, I wasn't nourishing myself as well as I usually do, which was atypical for me. I had a really stressful several things going on in my life. Three, I was working in an integrative practice, and my boss wanted me to teach detox classes where we sold these detox kits and talked people through detoxes, and she wanted me to try it. So all around that time, all of that was going on. There I was. I ended up in the hospital with acute appendicitis, and I had to have my appendix removed. And I really, reflecting back on that, I think that detox liberated things in my body that I was not prepared to get rid of at that time, and they accumulated in my
Perfect
appendix
storm.
and it had to be taken out. So I've actually had a lot of other patients where I've asked them that. Did you do a detox before you had to have your appendix removed? And they said, actually, yeah, I did. So you do really want to be careful with using some of these high dose herbs. If you're using milk thistle, if you're getting Myers cocktail IVs, you want to be diligent and just rather do daily detox with dark colored fruits and vegetables, your berries, your greens, your bitters. Do that daily detox. It's going to be there's nothing that's a quick fix, but you're going to have more long-term benefits. Learn from me. All right, perfect.
Wow. That was
An hour
great.
flew by.
That was fast. Lots of questions. This was amazing. Just want to say, for all of you watching, if you enjoyed this live Q&A, let us know down below. If you're watching this later, send us a comment down below. This is our dietitian talk. So if you enjoyed our dietitian talk, first Friday of every month, if you're connecting with us, marytout.com. You can find out more and connect on all of our social platforms. So grateful for all of you sharing your
Yes.
knowledge.
And we'd love for each of our dietitians to share where you can find them as well and follow what they're posting on their particular specialties, because they're all so interesting. We'd love to hear from you all too, where they can find you.
So you guys can find me on Instagram and TikTok at katiechakos.nutrition.
I can be found on LinkedIn, Laura Sanchez, and on Instagram as The Emotional RD. And that's it for now.
Nice.
And you can find me on Instagram at Recovery Nutrition RD. And also I am on the Married to Health website as well. You can find me there if you want to book an appointment or get a link to anything else.
Yep.
Love it. Great. And everyone can be found on our mutual page, Dietitians of Married to Health, on Instagram. So if you want to follow us there, sign up for our newsletter as well. We like informing you all over at marriedtohealth.com whenever we have anything going on, our larger team has anything going on. So we love staying in touch. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. It's been a great time. We hope you heal
Plant
with each meal.
diversity challenge coming up. Wonderful things. So we hope to connect with all of you. Thank you. Until next time, heal with each meal, everybody. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.